Hi, my name is Barbie Flanagan. Welcome to True Crime Terror Tales. If this is your first time here, please like, subscribe, and leave lots of comments and ideas. Today we were talking about the Night Stalker. His name is Richard Ramirez, and he is one of the most horrific serial killers in U.S. history. His story is complicated, and I decided to just concentrate on his childhood and how he became the monster that he was. Now, we do cover some sensitive topics, and there are some graphic images that I blurred out. But if you're a true crime fan, you're going to find this piece interesting.
You're looking at an evil man, Richard Ramirez, also known as the Night Stalker. For 14 months in the mid-1980s, Ramirez went on a gruesome and brutal murder spree in Los Angeles and the San Francisco Bay Area. He raped, tortured, and murdered 15 victims. The men and women who survived his attacks are forever haunted by his dark, hollow eyes and raggedy teeth. He made many of them swear their allegiance to the devil.
As far as Satan is concerned, I believe in a malevolent being. His description eludes me, but I have felt powers that are evil.
How did Ramirez become a Satan-loving monster? A delve into his childhood provides some answers. Julian and Mercedes Ramirez were the serial killer's parents. They settled in El Paso, Texas. Julian was a police officer in Mexico before moving to America, where he became a laborer for the railroad. Mercedes was born in Colorado. She spent a lot of time in Mexico where she met Julian. Once they married, she worked in a boot factory where there were strong chemicals. As a result, the couple's 5 children were born with health issues. On February 29, 1960, Richard Ramirez entered the world. He was the baby of the family. When Ramirez was 2, he tried to climb a dresser. It tipped over and split open his forehead. He was unconscious for 15 minutes. Emergency room doctors used 30 stitches to seal the wound. When he was 5, he fell off a swing and the wooden seat knocked him out. Experts say serious head injuries at a young age can cause aggression, moral impairment, and hallucinations. Soon after the second head injury, Ramirez began seeing visions and having seizures, which lasted throughout his teen years. The Ramirez household was Christian. They attended church on Sundays, but they weren't a happy family. Julian was an alcoholic who beat everyone in the house, including himself. There were times when Julian would get so angry that he hit his head against the wall until he knocked himself out. His wife and children were terrified of his dangerous temper. When Ramirez was 12, his cousin Mike Ramirez returned home from a second tour in Vietnam. He was a war hero to the world, and Ramirez idolized him. They spent long days smoking pot together. Mike told Ramirez gruesome war stories. He was a vicious killer. His squad was attacked and only Mike and another soldier survived. Mike said that the Vietnamese believed they wouldn't go to heaven if they were mutilated, so Mike would cut off body parts to psychologically torture them. He showed Ramirez Polaroids of at least 20 women he'd sexually assaulted, tortured, and murdered. Mike also taught his young cousin how to fight, shoot, and take a target by surprise. One day, Mike's wife Jessie came home and started nagging him to find a job. Mike took out his gun and shot her in the face. She dropped dead in front of a stunned Ramirez. This was the first time he'd witnessed death. He remembered Mike's words, "Having power over life is a high." Mike was sentenced to a mental institution, leaving Ramirez alone again. The teenager withdrew from his family and became obsessed with death. He was fascinated by the 19th century killer Jack the Ripper. He was a fan of horror films. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre was his favorite. He also began dabbling in Satanism and listened to heavy metal such as the rock band AC/DC. When he was 15, Ramirez got a job at a Holiday Inn. He used the master key to enter the rooms and steal from guests when they were gone. One time he tried to sexually assault a female guest. Her husband caught Ramirez and beat him up. The teen was arrested, but the charges were dropped because the couple refused to return to El Paso to testify. Ramirez's parents were fed up with his behavior. He was selling drugs as well as using LSD and smoking weed constantly. He'd often sleep in cemeteries to escape his father's abuse. After a stint at reform school, Mercedes kicked her son out, and he went to live with his older sister Ruth and her husband Roberto. Unbeknownst to Ruth, Roberto was a peeping Tom. He took Ramirez along on his late-night excursions and taught him how to peek inside homes without being caught. Years later, Ramirez would use everything Mike and Roberto taught him to kill innocent people. In 1977, Mike was released from the mental hospital, and he and Ramirez resumed their relationship. Ramirez continued stealing, doing drugs, and going to jail until 1982, when he decided to move to LA. Ramirez landed on Skid Row. It was easy to blend in. He was a full-blown heroin and cocaine addict. He didn't bathe often and survived on sweets and soda, which rotted his teeth out. He stayed in the notorious Cecil Hotel and other cheap spots. His main source of income was burglary, and sometimes he got caught. During some time in jail, he met an inmate who helped him develop his interest in Satanism, and Ramirez began serving the devil. Ramirez's first murder victim was not discovered until 2009, when his DNA was linked to a 1984 murder of a 9-year-old girl, May Lung. She'd been assaulted and stabbed in the basement of her apartment building. From April 10, 1984 to August 24, 1985, Ramirez attacked 25 men, women, and children. 15 victims died. He'd break into homes and shoot the males. Then he'd sexually assault, torture, and leave the women for dead, escaping into the night with their valuables. Ramirez was a drug-induced madman. He stomped an elderly woman to death, leaving a shoe print on her head. He gouged out the eyes of another woman. He snuck into a 6-year-old's bedroom and kidnapped her. Luckily, she survived his attack. He used guns, knives, machetes, tire irons, and claw hammers. He'd often pistol whip and strangle the female victims by hand. Before they died, he made them profess their love for Satan. Ramirez began making mistakes, like leaving a via footprints at crime scenes. San Francisco and LA authorities made the link that they were dealing with a serial killer. He was dubbed the Nightstalker. August 24, 1985, Ramirez parked his car and approached the Ramirez home. 13-year-old James heard him and alerted his parents. James was able to give police a description of the red car and a partial license plate number. That same night, Ramirez broke into a house 2 miles away. He shot William Carnes and sexually assaulted his fiancée, Inez Erickson. He told her he was leaving her alive so that she could tell everyone that the Nightstalker attacked her. Inez was Ramirez's last victim. She gave authorities a good description of her attacker. Police soon located the stolen red car Ramirez had driven. They found a single fingerprint, and when they ran it, they got a hit. Richard Ramirez's face was posted everywhere by August 31, 1985. He had just caught a glimpse of himself on a newspaper when a crowd of people recognized him. Ramirez tried to run, but some brave men caught and beat him until the police arrived. The Nightstalker was caught. Ramirez was convicted on 43 counts and received 19 death sentences. Despite his devotion to Satanism, he became a sex symbol. Ramirez says many Christian women tried to save him, but they fell in love instead. Doreen Lloyd married Ramirez in a death row wedding. She eventually left him, and he moved on to another groupie. Ramirez had his teeth fixed and did interviews, basking in the limelight. Deranged women lusted after him, while occult members idolized him. He wrote letters to his many girlfriends and fans. He'd even send them these disturbing drawings. They are a scary look inside the serial killer's mind. Ramirez never made it to the gas chamber. June 7, 2013, he died from B-cell lymphoma at the age of 53. He refused to apologize for his horrible crimes.
Why on earth would you have hurt those people? Why did you kill those people?
No comments. No comments. I cannot answer it at this time.
Ramirez was on death row for 23 years, and that is due to California's long and complicated appeals process. He died in a hospital. Wasn't the same as his victims, who died in terror and pain. Thanks for watching. See you next time.